Ray Dalio, whom created an investment management firm called Bridgewater Associates, says that we are possibly near the brink of a collapse, possibly because of the polarity in society and many other factors. And just because it hasn't happened in your lifetimes yet doesn't mean it will happen. He was taking short-term decisions before, but now he identified many patterns that lead to certain results. And that how he came to the conclusion. I'm making this video to help you understand and help myself understand that we are not a victim to the system, the government, the education, or the economy, because we can take advantage of any sort of economy. Especially these days, we should block out times to bring chaos into order, especially in these tumultuous times. Therefore, we should be compelled to play out our vision as the ultimate form of mastery to prepare for the future in order to help teach other people and help other people, help yourself, and be able to unite the world. I'm going to bring forth my thoughts of what is happening around the world, especially the last economic cycle, the political things that's happening, and how I am going to use my particular brain in order to use it optimally towards the future. Because sometimes we become unprepared for what is happening. I know there's an economic downturn that might happen. In a way, that is a good thing. It's only going to last like 2 years, most likely. It might not happen this year, it might not happen next year, but it is getting close. In this first section, I'm going to help you free your mind, because we really need to free our mind in the chaos that exists, especially as polarity is coming. We need to think for ourselves. We need to be able to understand ourselves, our responses to the world, and what motivations people have amongst the media and other things. So we can have and ground ourselves with reason and have spirituality without dissing the reason. So what do I mean by freedom is in the mind of the beholder? It is that the outside world does not dictate your brain. It does not dictate your future. You get to think for yourself and control what you consume informationally and physically. If with careful analysis you can learn and go through it and be able to integrate it into your thought processes and be able to ask questions to understand, and therefore you can emotionally connect to logic itself. And logic as in being able to capture the actual essence of reality before language models through your sensory experience and other ways of experiencing things. This is why AI is not 100% intelligent, because it does not have consciousness and it does not have every aspect of human nature and every aspect of experience. It just has the linear progression of words itself. Just remember, when you're going through this journey, people are fallible. Therefore, the judgment upon you is for people who don't think. And the judgment upon you may be right or wrong, but doesn't mean what you're doing is intrinsically right or wrong. It just means that they look through their lens and you look through your lens. But you, after watching this video, will think of the world and yourself more objectively, rather than attaching judgments and opinions upon yourself. What not to base your emotions on. So maybe the polarity in society and politics, the anger of society, and the rampant stupidity that is amongst the people around. It definitely does seem like people do not base their emotions on logic. Rather, they only go to defend their position. And it definitely does seem like I should not be good for being good's sake or be bad for being bad's sake. Rather, I'm going to prime my mind to not be susceptible to indoctrination or immoral influence and see things objectively. Another thing that I/you should not base your negative emotions on the results you get from short-term thinking. I've realized if I stayed with short-term thinking and if I'd had periods in my life where I had and didn't realize I just didn't have long-term thinking, is that I would succumb to negative emotions which swamped my consciousness. I've realized if I do not actually understand the results I get in the long term, I start beating myself up for whatever I do. But if I look for the long term, there's always room for improvement, but also some urgency. If you have negative emotions and see things objectively, therefore you can process your emotions properly. It might take a lot of skill and journaling over time, but that is okay. You are only human. In the jungle, the lion. Okay, a focus slogan. Understanding how your understanding of the world can help you help the world be a better place. And I trust if you have great self-reflection and understand the nuances of many given situations, that you can bring lessons in context to the world, because we need people who authentically dismantle any limiting beliefs and bring forth great lessons to the world and use their influence wisely and carefully. This next section is called Grounding Yourself with Reason. I'm going to be explaining what is worth paying attention to, what are the arguments on all sides, and how do we not get drowned in a sea of information and ground ourselves in the fundamentals. With this first question, what is worth paying attention to? Understanding this will concentrate your efforts into what is the most important. And when you focus on what is most important, you'll be able to act and reiterate upon those things that are most fulfilling. And if you gain mastery on a couple important things and prioritize it, you will more likely get the life you want and what your family wants, and understanding how to interact with others and be able to grow your business and be able to have a fulfilling life. If you know what to pay attention to and how to pay attention to it, you're also going to have to see what are the arguments on all sides and see what biases are present, meaning some logical errors or things that your brain sticks to in exclusion of other views. Here are a couple biases you should pay attention to. There's the confirmation bias, which is when someone believes or sticks to the first thing that they read or heard. There's number 2, there's the Dunning-Kruger effect, or the opposite, imposter syndrome. Dunning-Kruger effect is when your overconfidence in your ability or understanding about something, or when you have the imposter syndrome, you'll have an undervaluation of what your abilities actually are or what your knowledge actually is. There's the halo and the horn effect. The halo meaning if you have a positive impression of that person, you'll see them first surface level and you will assume that they know more than they actually do. You'll assume that if they're rich, they know what they're doing in making money. You don't know how much luck was played in that particular situation. With the horn effect, that is a bias where if you have a bad impression of that person at the start, sometimes it is true if it is a gut feeling, but sometimes a certain belief that that person has, you overgeneralize what. If they're in the left side, you'll assume that they're all into wokeism. If they're on the right side, you'll assume that they're some kind of Christian nationalist or whatever. you have an overarching assumption about a single belief that person has. That is not only what the horn effect is, it is just a bad impression. Another important question you should ask, whether it is to people, to the computer, or whatever, is where do you get the information? Ask yourself or ask the other person, where do you get the information? Because they might be saying something that is truly false, and maybe something that where they got their information is maybe pseudoscience, or it could be something that their biases are really present with their personal experiences and anecdotal evidence. And sometimes they do not pull from many subjects and know the interconnectedness between everything. Some things are not even true or false, rather, it might lean more predominantly to one side of the argument to be more true than the others, because a theory is a body of objectively verifiable facts. Therefore, that body of facts come together as in one thing. Therefore, it may be really hard to grasp on something called an hyperobject, meaning there's so many variables that it's really hard to understand what the truth really is. Therefore, the world is more complex than you realize. I always say, capture the essence of reality before language models. Next and last important question we should ask, maybe not the last, you can always add some questions, but this is a very important question, is how do we not get drowned in the sea of information, rather ground ourselves in the fundamentals. So if we actually have a long-term overview, have enough information, and understand the credibility of the information, we will be able to make informed decisions in the second and third order consequences of whatever you do or the government does or scientists do for making that decision, whether it is moral decisions, whether it is logical decisions, and understanding the interconnectedness of everything. Understand what will you do today to make it better tomorrow, and what is the best information you can get. And as soon as you understand the basics of neuroscience, the basics of biology, and whatever, you'll be able to judge the information of what that person says to what the reality really is. Okay, next section, and that is good. Tell me if that is a good overview, how I can improve on logic, because sometimes I get really confused with the nature of understanding and stuff, because I always am confused and I try to organize my thoughts, but it doesn't always work. Might be my autism, but whatever. Mental health and productivity. It is a misconception that meditation is suppressing your thoughts and trying not to think. It is not about not thinking. It is about observing without giving power to any particular thought. It is about being creative. It is about letting your thoughts flow and solve problems unconsciously and bringing them to the level of consciousness. Theta is the brainwave state for creativity. There was a story with Thomas Edison where he would have a metal ball in his hand, he would fall asleep, and as soon as it dropped, he would get his ideas. And I learned this from a guy named Vishen Lakhiani. There is also a billionaire entrepreneur named Tom Billio. He started a company called Quest, and he says that 80% of his ideas do come from when he's in theta state or close to when you're sleeping. Theta state is also when you're sleeping, but it can be waking theta. And yes, What is also very good for your mental health while also being productive is using something as a vessel for your purpose, like your business, raising a family, and doing any way that you can bring out your purpose and bring out a way in which you can serve the people around you and the world. And the last little point that I want to bring up for this section is different brains require different amounts of structure and chaos, different amounts of stimulation for a particular task. For example, people with ADHD, they need novelty and stimulation and a much variability. With autism, we need a lot of structure. With a neurotypical, I guess it's anywhere in the middle. I do not know exactly. They are more evenly distributed with their skills, but with autism and ADHD, they have a more spiky profile between what they're good at and what they're bad at. Therefore, you need to understand your strengths, what causes you to focus the most, and what your purpose is to help you with your focus and be able to build your future, while also paying attention to the present. This next section you really should pay attention to because it is about the economy and how you can actually play out your vision even if the economy might crash. Ray Dalio predicted that there's a good possibility that that might happen either this year or the next 5 years because he was understanding the patterns that happen throughout history. It is not 100% certain, though he is somewhat certain. There are a couple factors we should look for that play out in society. As Ray Dalio said, we may not believe that there is going to be a crash. We might think that we're going to have to panic when a crash happens, but remember that it will always go back up. It definitely does seem like it. And he was identifying the patterns throughout history and coming up to the conclusion that the factors that are playing out in society today are indicative of what happens before a crash. There is wealth inequality. The GDP may be the average of what people actually spend and how much hours are outputted in their work, but that skews that there is poverty and there's real riches, and that is starting to separate more and more. There's also political polarity in which no one agrees with each other and society is combating each other and shutting down each other's opinions. There is also a values gap between that political polarity. But what can we do about this? We can always keep our money in the stock market. People before in the Great Depression never thought of actually investing because they thought it's not going to get any better, but it did actually get better. People believe what is happening their whole lives might be the same throughout their lives, but that is not true. If you are able to ride the wave up in the stock market, that is good. It might only last maybe like 2 or 3 years on average, maybe 5 years, even if it is 15 years. If you're in your 20s, you can just save up for a crash when it happens. As Warren Buffett says, get greedy when everybody is panicking, and don't go so as hard when it's already prosperous, or something like that. I don't exactly remember. Like this video if you find it valuable, and if you would like to keep on going with this YouTube channel, you can like or subscribe or both, or stuff like that. You don't have to. If you actually like it, you can subscribe and do stuff like that. You don't have to. But I'm a new guy, so support the new guy, okay? Okay. Wish you health and happiness. Bye.